Okay. All right, I'd like to call to order the April 25th, 2018 Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals meeting at 7:05. Jen, roll call, please.
Chairman Dash.
Here.
Commissioner Kempa.
Here.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Here.
Commissioner Tamman.
Here.
Commissioner Patel.
Here.
Commissioner Mellon.
Here.
Okay, the first item of business is consideration of the March 22nd, 2018 PZBA meeting minutes. Are there any corrections, changes, or comments to the minutes as presented? Okay. If not, do I have a motion to approve the March 22nd, 2018 PZBA minutes as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Jen, roll call, please.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Tamman.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Mellon.
Aye.
Chairman Dash.
Aye. Okay. Okay, our first item on old business is PZBA zoning public hearing case ZBA 17-13TA. The applicant is the City of Prospect Heights. Bless you. Address at 8 North Elmhurst Road, Prospect Heights, Illinois 60070. The applicant is seeking a text amendment in regards to various changes and additions related to our commercial vehicle parking within the R1 residential district. I need a motion, please, to reopen the public hearing, application number ZBA 17-13TA.
So moved. Second.
Voice vote, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and swear everybody in. So if you're here this evening to speak to this case, you can stand now, and I'll swear everyone in at the same time. And then when you come to speak on this matter, you'll just need to state your name and address for the record. Okay, so if you'd like to stand up if you think you might be speaking tonight. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Director Peterson.
Chairman Dash, members of the PZBA. Tonight we're before you to bring forward the draft recommendations of the additional parking section 5-8-2 of the City of Prospect Heights zoning code. Last summer, staff was directed to research this and bring recommendations back with the committee involved some aldermen. We came before the Plan Commission in November with proposed ordinances and changes. There was a lot of feedback from the community at that event, and a committee was formed involving members of staff, 2 members of the PZBA, Commissioner Patel and Chairman Dash, myself, Code Enforcement Officer Perzicki. And over the next 2 months, we had 2 meetings and went through each of the items that were in the ordinance. Had a great discussion about how to make this apply to our community with allowing individuals who needed a vehicle to work, and not to ban all of them, but to put reasonable restrictions and to preserve the residential R1 zoning district. So the committee went through each of the items, and those recommendations have been on the village's website, e-news blast. Staff emailed them to those individuals that had given us email addresses to receive email. Also, every week I make an announcement of tonight's meeting at the city council meetings to keep the public informed of this issue. So very quickly, I'll go through the highlights of this, which have been on the website. One of the first things...
Dan, excuse me to interrupt. Do we have any copies of what's proposed here at the meeting tonight? For the people who came, or no?
I didn't, Jen, did you?
Okay.
Could you make some?
That's
if
fine.
needed?
Does anyone want a physical hard copy tonight? Or
Most of you.
have you pulled it off the website?
A couple.
Okay.
Jen,
Do you want me to, the facts and
How about,
that one, or which exhibit do you want?
How about these three? Right, this is the compared changes. And then that's a frequently asked.
Okay.
Thank you, okay.
As part of the information campaign,
Right.
staff published on the website 3 documents. The actual draft ordinance with the changes bolded and underlined, and the deletions removed. We've also put together a table similar to the one that was published last fall before showing what the changes and the impacts may have. And then we also did a frequently asked questions to help people understand how these changes would affect them. So the first thing that we needed to do was define what commercial vehicles were and are. And this will be added to our city code as part of the definitions section. We are looking at D plate or any vehicle over 8,001 gross vehicle weight to 12,000 pounds, regardless of signage, logos, ladders, racks, or similar styled accessory equipment. That has always been considered a commercial vehicle since 1977. So we're keeping that the same, we're just more clearly defining it in this current code. The one exception is that based on comments from that first meeting, if you have a personal use pickup truck that is a D plate and there's no signage, no ladder racks, no other equipment that's added that's commercial and base, those would be exempt. However, if you've got ladder racks, if you've got other equipment or signage and logos on those larger D plate pickups, they would be considered a commercial vehicle. Secondly, B plate or any vehicle less than 8,001 GVW that has commercial signage, logoing, any ladder racks or similar styled accessories or equipment. Because in our current ordinance, B plate trucks, regardless of any accessory painting or equipment, were exempt. They weren't considered commercial vehicle yet. That is where a lot of the issues arose from. 3, there was concern about trailers that were for commercial usage, landscape trailers, other types of trailers, so we defined what those were. And then during the course of the discussion with the committee, the discussion of box trucks, cab over style trucks, primarily delivery style, commonly known as a cube van, cube truck, box van, which is a straight truck cab over frame with an accessory box, a secondary box, was added as a definition. So those were the major items under definitions. And then we went through and originally the city, the recommendation was that any commercial vehicle had to be parked on an approved hard surface of asphalt, concrete, pavers. After discussion and work, hearing what the community said and what the committee came out of is that we are recommending now that approved gravel parking pads, driveway extensions in the side or rear yard may be constructed with proper building permits. So anything behind the front line of the house, the side of the garage or the rear area could still be gravel, but it would have to be approved, you know, like anything else, any other driving surface or parking surface. So that was a change from the original recommendation. We did keep the screening of 6-foot style board on board or solid fence or non-deciduous trees with the opacity to effectively screen the vehicles. So if you are in an area that could be open to your neighbor, those commercial vehicles would have to be screened on the side of the driveway nearest the neighbor. And we can talk more about that later. We also added in, because there was a discussion of the Sprinter style or the newer type of vans, and the heights and sizes and where they came from and what is the common area. So the committee had determined that vehicles in excess of 110 inches in height, including rooftop accessories, are not permitted to be stored open on the driveway in the R1. What that means is you can still have them, but you can't park them on your driveway in the open, in the front yard. They could be in the side yard, they could be in the rear yard. We're not saying you can't have them, but if you want to park them on the driveway in the front, they have to be under 110 inches in height. Box trucks, regardless of plate designation, are prohibited from being parked or stored in the R1 district. So that was a change that came out of the committee action. In the event of a discrepancy, because there was a lot of discussion of plate designation, and sometimes vehicles are misplated by the Department of Motor Vehicles, maybe it's coming from the dealership, or what transfer of plates from one vehicle to the other, they're miscategorized. And so to take the discrepancy and the argument out of it, if there is a discrepancy, the manufacturer's gross vehicle weight will dictate what the vehicle is, not just the plate designation. So that's only in those rare cases where we have a conflict in determining the size of a vehicle. Then it goes to the manufacturer's gross vehicle weight. On non-commercial trailers, you can have no more than one open or closed non-commercial trailer can be parked in the open, because there was discussion about, well, I have a little trailer that I use, utility trailer, does that count as a commercial trailer or not? So we're giving those people the ability to keep a non-commercial trailer there. Snow plows. We know a lot of guys have snow plows. They are allowed to be parked in the front of an R1 property, properly attached to the vehicle between November 1st and April 1st each year. However, only one vehicle at the residence should have the snow plow on it. Same thing. You know, for plowing your driveway or doing that, you don't need to have two or three, but one should suffice. Okay. Signage. There was considerable signage, ladder rack and equipment, and so commercial vehicles less than 12,000 gross vehicle weight that have company signage, ladder racks, or commercial vehicles may be parked in the open and in the front area of the driveway with the following conditions. So again, you can have those there, but 3A would be signage. Commercial signage area shall be limited to 2 feet by 3 feet, 6 feet of sign area on up to 3 sides of the vehicle, with the total signage area not to exceed 18 square feet. This was part of the discussion about controlling business signage in a commercial or in a residentially zoned district. The city controls signage for all businesses in all industrial and commercial and business districts, as well as in residential. So we're not saying you can't have a signed vehicle, it's just how much signage would be permitted and controlled. With this section, though, we understand that a lot of guys have vehicles that have more signage area than that. So the committee is recommending, and staff is concurring, that we allow a 12-month grace period from the adoption of this ordinance, if this goes through with this size on it, 1 year for individuals to either have their vehicles re-signed, magnets, other items, to limit the signage on their vehicles. And we will not go out there and ticket people in that year. We won't do it. We'll work with people, we'll educate, and we think that's a reasonable time frame for guys to get into compliance on that side. Ladder racks and rooftop commercial equipment, if your vehicle has it, that including the vehicle shall be less than 110 inches. And then finally, the fines that are possible went from 500 to 750, but that's been consistent and was changed through every fine throughout the city code in the last 2 years. So that was just an administrative update. We believe that the changes allow individuals to keep one vehicle that they need for work, that they need to be able to livelihood, can have signage, can have some equipment on it, and still park in the front on their driveway. However, multiple commercial vehicles do negatively impact and change the characteristic of the R1 zone district. With that, I am finished, and if you have any questions of me, or you can take other testimony.
Do any of the commissioners have questions for Director Peterson? Okay, thank you, Dan.
You're
We'll
welcome.
go ahead and open it up for public comment. So if you're here this evening to speak to this case, then you can come forward and you can state your name and address for the record. And I'd like to keep the public comment this evening specific to the proposed changes. If you have a commercial truck and you have questions whether your truck may or may not comply, Mike is here to answer questions tonight. So we want to talk about the code that changes that are proposed versus your specific vehicle. So if you have questions, Mike can answer those for you on a specific case-by-case basis. Great, thank you.
Good evening. As a 33...
Your name and address.
Frank Gable.
Frank?
Gable, G-A-B-L, on 400 North Etowa.
Thank you, Mr. Gable.
You're welcome. So as a 33-year member of this community, I'm here to contest your proposed blanket and arbitrary ban on box trucks, though I will be referring to them as custom work vans, since this is not only the accurate description for my situation, but it is an effort on my part to counter the negative connotation associated with the term box truck, which could irrationally affect one's opinion during this regulatory process. So unlike ordinary work vans, which are produced in total on an assembly line in a single day, such as a Ford Transit, Chevy Express, Ram ProMaster, Nissan NV, and Mercedes Sprinter, custom work vans consist of a cab and chassis with a separate custom enclosure manufactured and mounted by a specialty company for the express objective of meeting a buyer's specific and unique needs. Together, the separate enclosure and the cab chassis create a custom vehicle. Additionally, the custom enclosure typically provides full access from the cab in addition to the rear, just like an assembly line van. Now, the list of ordinary vans just mentioned are all legal according to this revised ordinance, since they all fall within the parameters of a D plate, which cover vehicles up to 12,000 pounds gross weight. With that in mind, the absolute largest of the ordinary vans mentioned that fall within the revised guidelines is the Mercedes Sprinter, which tops out at 109 inches tall, 24 feet long, and 11,000 pounds gross weight. And this revised regulation allows for any ordinary van, as long as it does not exceed 110 inches in height, or the weight limit of a D plate as determined solely by a particular vehicle's gross weight specified by the manufacturer. In comparison, the custom work van that I am considering is a full 2 feet shorter in height than your 110 restriction, and at only 18 feet long and a mere 9,000 pounds in gross weight, it is a full 6 feet shorter in length and 2,000 pounds less in gross weight than the largest assembly line van one can purchase and still be in compliance with this revised decree. Question: how do you justify your arbitrary ban on custom work vans in light of these inconvenient facts? And that's a rhetorical question, so I'll answer it for myself. To me, it should be obvious to anyone that banning a custom work van, which meet the same guidelines as an ordinary van, is not only unworkable and unfair, but most importantly, blatantly unlawful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And Dan, I think maybe we'll field some questions back to you at the end, and... That's fine. Okay. That's fine. Okay. Okay, anyone else here this evening to speak to the proposed changes to the amendment? Or- Okay. Okay.
Glenn Hanson, I have that elegant heating van at 407 West Willow. The signage is my question right now. That van is the face of my business. It has been here for 16 years, Glenview and Northbrook for 15 years prior to that. If you're talking about square footage, I could probably squeeze those letters into that square footage. I can't do it on a 2x4. You're talking about repainting a van, totally changing the face of my business, and relettering it. Now, if you want me to move the van to the side of the house, I'm sure my neighbor will like it 8 feet closer to his house than it is now. That would eliminate about 50% of the cars that drive by from seeing the van in the driveway. My problem with moving it to the side of the house is I have a swale that drains my yard, the neighbor's yard. It's a good, probably 10-inch swale that's at this house. I have about, at most, an 8-foot spot that I could extend that driveway.
So, Mr. Hanson, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask Code Enforcement Mike Przek a quick question. Are you familiar with the truck that Mr. Hanson's referencing?
I am familiar with Mr. Hanson's van.
Okay, so does his van, would the quantity of lettering he has on his van comply with the changes that are being proposed?
It would not. His vans are nicely decorated, but the size of the decoration and logos that are on there are bigger than 2 foot by 3 foot, as they currently are. He would be allowed to park it in the driveway with magnets over certain parts, or decide whether he wanted to park it inside the garage or on one of the other non-driveway sites. But as his van currently is, I think it's bigger than 2 foot by 3 foot.
Okay, so it exceeds the quantity of vehicular lettering that we're proposing?
It does, yes.
Okay.
So that van, as it stands, would have to be on the side of the house.
Or garage.
It's not going to go in the garage. If it would go in the garage, that's where it would be. Now, do you have an engineer that would be able to lay out how I would put this extension?
You would work with the building department if you were to apply for a building permit to construct a driveway.
Yeah, because like I say, it can't be blacktop. It's going to have to be gravel.
And that would be permitted for
Right.
what the city is
But
proposing
it has
right
to
now.
incorporate, I have about 7.5 feet to do this.
And again, just quickly as a reminder, board members here, we're not the ones proposing this, so we're reviewing the applicant's request. But talking with Director Peterson, I think the board members are fully aware that if there are residents who are trying to comply with these proposed changes, that there will be more people in front of us asking for variances to either construct driveways or gravel pads on the sides of their homes to shield their vehicles or,
Okay, well,
so, yeah, we are aware that that would be.
yeah, because I'm going to have, whatever I do, it's going to have to be approved and laid out.
Correct,
Because I have to incorporate this swale
correct.
that's draining 2 yards.
Commissioner Tamman, you have a question?
How much signage is on your truck now? How much are we out of the,
Well, I don't know the square feet. If you're I would guess if you were to smash it all together in one big glob, it would probably be the 2x5 or whatever it is per side. It's lettered and spread out. I mean, there's no way that I could redo that van and come close to what the face of my business has been for 30 years. I mean, that's like telling Apple to change their logo to a banana. And it's just not happening that way.
Thank you.
All right? Thanks.
Excuse me, I forgot to submit these pictures with my.
Certainly,
May I give it to you?
certainly.
Those would
Thank
be
you.
like worth a million words.
Thank you, Mr. Gable.
We'll take this into exhibit.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dave Johnson. I live at 608 Grego Court, and I don't have any trucks, but my question is, why was this brought about? Is it somebody complaining that they don't like what they see? Because there's homes in Prospect Heights that have been built that offend me, but we don't do anything about it. I've lived here 62 years. I used to work for ComEd at times in emergencies in our own town and that. What's going to happen? I'm retired now, but what would happen if I brought home an emergency truck because I put in 16 hours and we have stored damage here and I parked the truck in my driveway? Has anybody thought about that? Are the officer going to come and, ticket a ComEd truck and say, well, you should have taken it back to Maywood after working 16 hours because the ordinance that we've put into effect, your truck doesn't fit. So when you're trying to rescue Prospect Heights, you're now saying, the heck with Prospect Heights, this guy's got a truck, so let's ticket it. I don't understand why Prospect Heights, I grew up here. I'm 62 years old, grew up here from birth. It's a blue-collar town. The people come to Prospect Heights who have work trucks and that. People have now moved in 5, 6 years and says, hey, this offends me. I don't like the look. It's like people moving in by the airport going, hey, I don't like the sound of planes. Well, you knew there was an airport there. It's the same thing here. Leave the people alone. Leave the working guy alone. He's having a hard enough time making, ends meet. And now you guys go, oh, redo your sign. This poor gentleman. To redo a sign is going to be $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. Re-pour concrete, a couple more $1,000. That comes out of his budget. We're all just struggling. Everybody knows here we're struggling. I mean, and Prospect Heights has come up with many poor things. We had a stadium that cost the taxpayers millions, and it failed. So
maybe we could, revisiting some of these topics that you've brought up.
yeah, I'm
right?
just saying,
And we can
why,
ask.
why
right,
are we bothering
correct.
the
And we
poor
can ask
working guy?
Dan Peterson to explain why the city has asked for this.
Okay. Thank you
Absolutely.
very much for your time.
Thank you. The issue was raised because we have individuals that aren't just using it as their own work. They've brought their companies where they've had their employees show up. They've got multiple commercial vehicles, commercial trailers, and instead of going to an industrial area or commercial spot for their business, they have now created their individual residential lot as their business. We're not trying to take a guy who's got a single truck or works for a company and he's assigned a work vehicle. That was never the intent. The intent was that you've got individuals that have now 3, 4, in one case it has 5 people coming to his house as his business. This is a residential zoned district.
Why don't we just go after those people?
But
So correct. So that's what these proposed changes are doing. You're still allowed to have a work truck. You're still allowed to have a trailer. You're still allowed to park it on your driveway. So, right.
Well,
Right. So wait, easy, wait. So, and I guess I have one question for Mike. So in the event you were to encounter a vehicle, again, maybe it was a work situation where it came home, is the first contact with the homeowner a ticket that's finable, or what is the process, Mike?
Well, I'll answer that question, but I wanted to answer your question or scenario that you painted when you were up at the podium. If someone had the 16-hour day at ComEd and brought their ComEd home truck and parked it in their driveway, this ordinance allows for them to park that one vehicle there. But ComEd can't park their entire fleet in your driveway. That's just, and
But I mean,
I understand.
I'm parking it in the front because I have room there because I can't get it on the side of the house.
Exactly, and this.
So you could come and say, hey, everybody's seen the truck there.
But you're allowed to.
Well,
Right, so the ordinance does allow for you to park that one commercial vehicle in the driveway.
But it's not hidden. That signage is.
It doesn't have to be
Well-
hidden.
I understand that. Now, I'll get to Danielle's question is that, I'm the code enforcement officer and I'm the only one here. And I don't go and write a citation. I always would leave a first notice and then usually a second notice and make contact so that we could go over how you could be within the code. If you carefully read the ordinance here, even Dan mentioned a situation with someone having multiple trucks. If they're garaging one of those commercial vehicles and parking one legally on their driveway, according to this ordinance, they could even have then a trailer on the side or backyard. So they could actually literally have more than, if you read this carefully, you can have more than one vehicle depending on how you do it. We just don't want the situation where there's multiple commercial vehicles parked out in the front.
Right, so we're,
Now, with respect to the comment that was made during that, at some point, the committee had to decide where do you limit that? And so certain size restrictions and weight restrictions and everything, there had to be some limit as to where that comes in. So the other thing that I will add, piggyback onto what Danielle just asked me, is that not only do I not write a ticket the first time, but I also have had people on similar situations with boats, RVs, and trucks call me and say, Mike, can you come out to my house and show me where I can legally park it and how I can work this situation? The building department will definitely work with anyone to see how we can make your vehicle conform.
and haven't we also made, hasn't the city also made exceptions with prior notice for people who've had to park RVs or trailers?
Yes, we have people, there are people who have RVs and boats that are outside of the code, but I also make allowances for them 2 or 3 days before a trip or 2 days after for loading and unloading. So if we had a situation like a ComEd person or a search situation like that where it was an occasional thing, that would be something that, I don't go out there and write tickets.
Well, I'm not saying that,
Yeah.
but if you enforce this law, God forbid something happens to you, now the next guy comes in and.
I'm
says,
not leaving.
I'm gonna enforce every code there is,
Right.
and, you know, I
Right.
go back to ComEd and go, here, I got, $750 fine for
Right.
trying to restore the power in Prospect Heights where I live.
Right, I understand your question, but not only would I work with someone beforehand to help them to locate a spot within the code or a situation within the code, but I also work with people who are in violation of the code. The goal is to get back into within the code, not to write you a ticket.
Anybody else?
Yeah, anyone else who, Mr. Gable, did you want to
All
come
right,
back
we
up?
got
I have a follow-up question when you get time.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. My name is Joseph Pazniak, 198 North Elmhurst Road. I'm lived with over 22 years, okay? And I remember with the first meeting about the same problem, okay? You got a bunch of people over the room, over 100 people. Everybody that's angry about the change, the rules. And you change the meeting with another month, and today go back, same problems. You got the records, what kind of people said like they change the rules or not. You got a question, how many people complain about this? You answer around 6 people. And 3 people with your side, with the city hall, and 3 people with the person who does live. So why you not put a void, like people decision, said like the change or not? That's the easy way. By the way, I'm feeling you change with the building departments. Mr. Dan Peterson, another Mr. Mike Porzewska, or sorry, maybe I'm not
okay. Perfect.
correctly your last name. I know you know me. You start little spy with the people, with lots of photographic, with my property, with my neighbors. You're not like this.
We can discuss your current code violations at a different time. This is for trucks.
That's okay, you know. My question, Mr. Dunn, are you left with the Prospect Heights?
No.
So that's the maybe easy for you change something, you know?
But I will say, so when the first meeting, you're correct, a lot of people attended, and that's why we decided to more carefully think over what the city agreed to pull their application to provide time for the proposed changes to be more carefully thought over. And I would say, I served on the committee, and I was actually a little surprised, because the committee was, the people who served on the committee, there were a few women who owned trucks who they used for personal. There were 3 or 4 business owners on the committee. And so,
I
as
understand.
business owners, I was personally surprised that they were very much in favor of what, their feedback helped us craft this. It was their opinion as business owners that if you're running a business, you should have some place to run that business
Okay,
and
that's
store your
not
trucks.
my question.
Right, but I wanted to say, though,
My general
that-
question, why you not try to give the decision with the people, residents from Prospect Heights, what he like? That's a sample.
And we did that by forming the committee, and we did that by having people come to meetings.
Look at this.
We allowed for,
How many people are interested about that problems?
But what part
Like
of
with
this
the
don't
first
you like?
meeting.
What part of this don't you like?
Yeah, so-
Which, the new one, what particular part of this don't you like? The new one that's revised, have you read the new one? Okay, but which particular line item affects you and you don't like?
right, so Mr.
Which
Gable
particular
spoke
one?
specific to
You
box
gave us
trucks.
an item he doesn't like. What don't
Right.
you
This
like?
is the main general problem.
So-
Nobody before would have complained.
That's not true.
That's not true?
That's not true.
So that's why you don't like with the void. Void with the people that's a
Okay,
decision.
going back, what part of this do you not like?
Right, so if you could be more specific,
Yes.
then the board members can take into consideration your concerns, because what's being proposed, the board members can agree, we can disagree, we can agree with conditions, we could propose changes, so it helps having more specific feedback. So as a group, I know we're going to talk about box trucks. Mr. Hanson brought that to our
Oh,
attention.
that's a couple things. So you got to, with the limit, something sign. So that's today, that's, lots of people use with the rep, with a sign, all the trucks. So that's, what kind you got a choice to measuring with a sign, with a contractor sign, or heating guys, or electrical, or reality state? So he need throw out all the sign? That the cost around, that depends what kind of size, between 2,000 to start to 5,000, how the big vehicles. And what kind you got a choice to measure it?
Okay, so
Lettering or
so you would propose that there be no limit on the quantity of signage on
Exactly, but
vehicles?
that's not great sense.
Okay.
Okay, so you would,
Thank you.
noted. Thank you, Joseph. Okay, anyone else here this evening to speak?
I wasn't
Great.
sworn in, I wasn't, didn't talk, but
Yeah, I can swear you in. That's fine. Do you swear that the testimony you will give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Kevin Fang of 210 East Marion. I sent a letter to Mr. Peterson, and
It was,
we gave to
it was
everybody to read.
distributed to everyone.
Okay, and it's in regards to a box truck. And I work with, I don't want to attempt your last
Mike,
name. 'cause
Mike
it's
is fine.
Mike.
Yeah.
And I applied, for the permit, I got the permit for relocating my box truck to the back of the property. I concealed it from the neighbors, and I've gotten approval from the neighbors that it's not objectionable. They're happy with the way it looks. If I have to put more trees, I'll put more trees out. Whatever I have to do to just conceal the truck, because I need the truck. To just say, let's get rid of these cube vans, I don't think I think we can make an amendment and just do something a little more to conceal the vehicles, as opposed to just getting rid of them.
Just for clarification, Mr. Fang, D-plate box truck,
It's D-plate.
D-plate, do you know what the height is at of your vehicle?
It's over the.
It is a little over the 1 ton.
How much over, you know?
It's, I'm not exactly sure, but it's 7,700-pound truck.
Yeah.
So at the time when this came, and I believe your letter said 2015 is when you
Correct.
did this, you took the steps to comply, and
Right,
And-
I got my permit,
and so now-
that was necessary in the past.
to understand, because of the change of the box truck, that would affect you negatively.
Correct,
Okay.
thank you.
It's the highest one, they're one of them.
Okay, anyone else here this evening to Mr. Hanson, you want? Certainly.
Mr. Gable.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Gable, my fault.
Thank you. I met with Dan we had a great conversation a couple weeks ago. And through this conversation here, I still see a problem with the question of parking a van that needs to be screened in the open on the front driveway. Because here's one of the pages that you just delivered to somebody, and I have it now. And there's a couple questions that were added, and this goes back to my question with Dan and with Mike. And it says, how can I screen my commercial vehicle if I park it in the open on the side or rear yard? But it doesn't say anything about the front driveway. So like me, I'm not screening nothing because there's nobody between me and the house that's 400 feet away on the other side of Willow. And the other direction, the same way. I have one whole corner, and then there's another house at the other end of the block. And as Dan said to me in an email, that I don't have to screen it to the people across the street, just adjacent property. Well, there is no adjacent property. But it still does, I still heard some confusion in some of these questions. So my question is, if you have a van, you have a D plate, like mine, a box truck, which is a work van, which I don't see how you can possibly not allow that, but that's beside the point. And when I'm allowed to park it on the front of my driveway, how can I can't screen that.
I can.
So are you saying, but my main question is, does the screening mean a truck that's parked in the open in a non-garage site, which is the front driveway? Does it still mean that?
Of a D plate or commercial vehicle or a D plate
Right.
vehicle or a custom work van.
Thank you.
That's parked in the driveway would need to be, in the front, would need to be screened from the closest adjacent property. So in your situation is unique because you're on the corner, but let's say we're talking about a house in the middle of the block.
Right.
The person parks their van there, they could use arborvitae or non-deciduous bushes to screen
Okay.
that on that side where the driveway is closest to that neighbor on that
Okay.
side. Does
But
that-
it's still, you know what I'm saying about the terminology in here? I'm not trying to be picky, I'm just trying to
Right,
say.
it just, those were frequently asked questions, so those don't cover
I know
every
we
scenario.
got into
Yeah,
that,
right,
but it's a
right.
question.
But I'm glad you brought it up, but yeah, so, yeah, the commercial or D plate, if it's in the side or backyard, it would be a fence or bushes, but if it was in the driveway, it would still need to be screened if it was a
Right.
commercial vehicle.
That was one question I had when I read the new ordinance, was the definition of adjacent. Is it both properties on either side, or is it the one closest to the driveway? Just a point of clarification, I wasn't sure how to interpret that.
We have, in the enforcement of the ordinance currently, we've used because typically your driveway will be on one side of the yard or the other. So the one that it's most adjacent to that would impact. And there are situations where one guy's garage and driveway is right out in front of someone's living room and picture window. So that was one of the reasons, Mike, you've been doing it for a long
Yeah,
time.
when I leave notices, it typically, like Dan says, the driveway is on the left or right, the vehicle or the boat or the RV will be parked on the driveway. On that side, usually the driveway is close to the property line, to 15 feet from the property line. It's that side that we're using as the screening.
Could I ask a question? You know, we're blanketing a box truck. I used to work for ABT, and I drove a box truck, and it was a cab with a box on the back that had no access from the inside to get into the actual box in the back. Does your van, is your van,
Yeah, about 90% of the box vans, which mine is actually called a cutaway van, which I know I would still get stuck with the terminology of box van. They all had access from the cab. It's just like a regular van.
Correct.
Except it's two pieces.
my feeling is that we're calling a box truck, and it really, which he calls it as a custom work vehicle, but as far as, it's no different than a van.
Thank you.
Commissioner DeGraff, that's a great observation. When I was directed to look at how to define a box truck, went to sources on the internet, went to some others, and the definition was that it was typically a two-part cabin chassis with a secondary box on a straight van or straight frame is a definition of a box truck. We did not, at that time, I did not get into any of how they are pass-through type or anything else. I looked at what the definition of the manufacturers said, and basically it was a cab with a chassis and a secondary box put on. So there is some situations, Mr. Gable did testify that his van is shorter than the limit, has no signage in its, so, if it's something that the PZBA might want to make a condition or recommendation as we move forward, that would be appropriate. But just so you know where that came from when I was asked to look up definition.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. You don't have one. If you had one, you wouldn't have come up with that.
Mike, quick question. Did you see these pictures?
Yeah, and I know Mr. Gable's.
So would that van fall outside of, with the size restrictions, the way it is?
With the size and weight requirements, he would be within those, well within.
So would you consider that a violation if that was in, as you as a code enforcer?
No, I wouldn't, but if we're defining it as a box truck, yes, I would, but if we're not defining it as a box truck, it would be within the size.
Maybe.
Common sense is dictating.
Yeah, I was on the committee, and I wouldn't find that offensive if I see that in drive. I would not find that offensive, what you have in pictures. I don't see that different than the red van you have next to it, so I'm in agreement with that. I think that.
Did you look at the pictures?
I did. Those helped a lot. Those help a lot. Can you pass those over to Bruce when they're done?
Yeah. Okay, anybody else?
Okay, anyone else here this evening? Certainly.
My name's Jeff Zach, 35 South Wildwood, Prospect Heights. And I'm kind of wondering if this whole thing about the trucks is the wrong thing. I mean, you guys just all sat up here and you're looking at guys with running businesses with trucks. Don't we already have something on the books for that? I mean, do we really have to go through making a new law that's gonna affect a ton of people? I mean, small guys with a truck at the house. I mean, we have stuff on the books. I'm pretty sure if you look, that if a guy's got 5 trucks and trailers in his drive, so why are we going after the trucks? Why aren't we going after the bigger businesses,
So Dan,
In other words, a truck's part of a construction guy's business. Doesn't matter what you do. So then next, what do? Do we go after the computer guy because he's got 6 lines in his house? Somebody don't like.
Jeff, I
think you're going after the wrong thing.
Right,
I
but I
mean,
think
you've
we-
got people on edge in town. Everybody I talk to or run into, they want to vote on it. They don't want to sit here because you got the people we elected in office sitting there, and they're going to tell us what their opinions are. They don't go out to their constituency. So I really think that, whatever you guys decide, I think, look more at from the business point of it. I mean, a big business, because most,
Right, so Dan or Mike,
bigger businesses, I think you're on the wrong, I think you got the right idea, but you're on the wrong track.
Right.
I'll take.
You're hitting the little guys.
so if we could let Dan respond to that, I think that
Sure.
might shed some more light
Thank
on
you.
this. Thank you, Jeff.
Jeff, thank you for your comments. One of the issues that has come up in this is, under the current ordinance, the only thing that it restricts is a D plate, okay? And it was shown at multiple times, and there's multiple examples where a lot of the commercial vehicles, whether they have signage or don't have signage, and have employees coming to their houses, were B plates that were not regulated. So we have a lot of situations where we have individuals not just working as an individual contractor, working for a contracting company that's been assigned, but actually creating their businesses. I looked at the business home occupation license. There's no restriction because we don't want to get to the point of telling people what businesses they can or can't be in. So therefore, when you start bringing individuals, now you're impacting the R1, the residential zoning of that neighborhood. So, as I stated earlier, and what the committee wanted is not to prohibit guys from having their trucks, but do we need to have 4 or 5 commercial vehicles in a person's driveway with their employees coming to the house and impacting that, having their materials delivered to the house? So the effort was not to take the opportunity for people to work, but preserving the R district. And when we come to the zoning, the same thing happens. We control, signage. We control signage in all the business zones. They're regulated. Heck, if you had your home occupation, you could have 24 square feet of signage at your yard, but yet everybody's upset because that we're now talking about controlling signage. But the city can do that to protect the integrity of the zoning district. We're not saying we're going to prohibit all signage. And is that 2 by 3 the right size? No, that was a number that was from the committee that came up. So if there's a suggestion, 2 by 4, something. But those were the complaints. We did get complaints about wrapped vehicles and billboards. And we did have complaints and if situations are addressed to the committee about larger actual box delivery trucks, not custom work vans, okay, that were basically rolling billboards. Is that what the town wants in their residential zoned districts? And that's trying to find a balance through better definitions to try and protect the zoning. So that's why we're having these discussions. That's why I was doing.
Can I add something to that, Dan? Jeff, I appreciate your comments, and Dan spoke about it briefly. We do have a home occupation code, but the actual parking of vehicles is not covered in that home occupation code because the two are connected. There was already enforcement or already an ordinance since 1977. 90% of what is in this current version was in the there were restrictions on D-plate trucks. No F-plate trucks were allowed. Those restrictions already existed, but I'm going to be honest with you, the definitions in that ordinance were horrible, which made it difficult to differentiate between different situations. So, the ordinance already did exist. It's just been cleaned up and some things have been added to it. And we've also had a change in times. In 1977, no one had a wrapped vehicle. If someone had a business, they had a 2 foot by 3 foot thing on their door, which they covered up with a magnet when they got home. Now, the nature of the advertising is much different. And as Dan says, we already regulate the size and type of advertising that happens even at a commercial location. With respect to your comment, Jeff, about the home occupation, this ordinance allows the guy who's got if you have a commercial truck and a commercial trailer, you can bring them home. Garage your trailer or park it on the side or rear yard, put the truck, as long as it's a D plate or less, in your driveway with shielding, and you're perfectly legal. You can have your truck and your trailer. You could have a commercial truck inside your garage. You could have a commercial truck on your driveway. There are ways that someone could have 2 or 3 commercial vehicles, but your neighbor's only going to see the one in your driveway, which is going to help to maintain that R1 district while not stopping someone from going and doing their job.
I understand what you're doing, but in other words, at that first meeting where we had a couple hundred people in the whole Prospect Heights Police Department in here, it was basically, when the question was asked, how many complaints did we have?
6.
And there was a bunch that was semi, the guy had. It ended up by a citizen of Prospect Heights. I believe it was 2 people complained. The rest were aldermen.
Just one.
And the one truck.
So
Jeff, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you need to come back to
If you
the,
could come up here because it is.
Oh, sorry.
right.
Jeff, I can address that because I'm the guy that takes 100% of those complaints. So it was,
It's like,
right.
so.
We had a total, I can address that. We had a total of 13 complaints that came from several different locations. Also, let's remember that I drive around town myself, and Mr. Fang would be the perfect example of how, before when I mentioned that I work with people before I would write a ticket, Mr. Fang and I met about his truck and came up with a better site that was within the code, and then he complied. Yeah, we did that ahead of time, so I'm glad he was here tonight. We had about 13 complaints on trucks. Some of those were F plates, some of them were D plates, there were different situations. There was already a ordinance that covered those, and on a daily basis, when I see a truck myself, I will leave someone a notice, and then if they contact me about their code violation, I work with them to get them back into code. So, yes, you're correct that we only had 13 complaints about trucks from citizens, but I also drive around and send notices on ones that we don't get complaints about.
Jeff,
So-
I had a question for you real quick.
Sure.
What don't you like about this particular ordinance? We're gonna ask the same question. I asked.
What don't I like? I think it's kind of an infringement on guys that work for themselves.
But
living.
how?
How? Because you're gonna tell me, because I don't have a Cadillac Escalade in the drive,
That's not what this
and,
says.
and I choose to drive a pickup because that's what I can afford, and I use that for work. It almost seems, and I mean, maybe
But
it's
you can put a
construction work
pickup-
and
you can
mentality,
put a
but I
pickup
take
in your-
it, I take it,
You could put a pickup in your driveway.
You could own 4
to put
pickup
a
trucks.
pickup,
You
but
could put a, yeah, you
You
can
could
put
have,
5.
you could have 6 pickup trucks. There's
what-
no
no,
ladder act, unfortunately.
One.
right? Or
One.
that was
One.
it. You can, oh, you can have one.
So you have to, I think
So-
you're not understanding, there was a
Well,
lot of
and
amendments
I-
made to this from the original one, and that's why I don't think you have the 200 people here, because it's reduced the amount of people here.
Well,
So
I
you, I
think-
mean, what we're asking everyone is, what particular part of this should we take in consideration about this code that you're not liking? When you give us an answer, I just don't like the whole thing.
Number one, you're going B plate, you're going D plate. You know, D plates can be a lot of things. D plates can be a pickup truck with a single tire on the rear axle.
But that's allowed.
D plates can be a
That's allowed.
crew cab
But that's allowed.
you can have. it
with a
like-
dually on it,
That's allowed.
but it's a D plate. So how can you
That's allowed.
discriminate one D plate against another plate? I mean,
That's in the, that's
vehicles
written,
are all done
that's,
by weight.
that's written in there.
So I
That's
mean,
written in there.
we're kind of overanalyzing it, I think. I mean, I think
Okay, so
you're taking one category and you're kind of dissecting it.
Well, the reason that was done,
And-
Jeff, the reason that D-Plate was done like that, to allow for the people, because they brought their voice to the table. They said, look, we have a pickup truck, we have a dually. It's not a commercial vehicle, it's my personal vehicle. That's why it was changed in here. So that voice was heard.
So in other
So
words,
that's why the change, so we can't say, look, we're not happy you're saying, well, you're making decisions on what, and classified vehicles. We're doing that to make was that the voice that we heard?
so in other words, the guys with like the Sprinter vans, they're going to be able to keep them in their drives?
Yes.
Because those are tall vans. So in other words, that's okay.
If it's under the 110 inches.
It's not commercial.
Right.
Okay. So when we heard the voices of the folks and what they said, and there's been a change. The 40-con line E350 is no longer there. The types of vehicles have changed.
Right.
Okay? And to accommodate those, we're looking at changing with the times, number one. Number two, in our current ordinance as it sits, there's no mention about B plates. But you know what guys are doing? They drive off the lot with a B plate on their vehicle because they didn't want to have it inspected at the dealership and get the rightful plate. So now I've got a guy with 4 B plate, perfectly legal, running a business out of his house. So we had to clearly define what vehicles are commercial.
Well, and he left the dealership paying all the taxes on it because there's a whole different tax rate on that too.
That's,
You don't pay them.
We
You
can't
get the
control
truck
them.
inspected, so a lot of
Well,
times
that's a
the
different story.
dealers do that. So
That's
now
a
this
different
guy-
story, although.
but
You know what I'm saying? I
But
mean,
the
there's
issue,
a lot
the
to
issue
the
is,
whole thing.
you know, in the definitions, we've always had a restriction on D plates. The city has since 1977, okay? But what's happened is, you get the Sprinter style or whatever the manufacturer, and you know they're over, but they're registered as a B plate. Now you've got 4 or 5 of them, and the guy's operating his business. Is that keeping the integrity of the R zoning? Okay, we don't want to tell the guy he can't have a business truck because guys like Mr. Hanson and others work hard and they need their vehicle to do their job. And we want them to have the ability to have it. And we're not saying you can't, but we're trying to put some reasonableness to how we define them so that we can preserve the zoning district.
And Mr. Zach, we're a recommending body, so we're here tonight to understand the application in front of us. and then this is gonna go to the city council, so I would
I would
encourage you.
basically, well, my opinion would be recommend that they don't do it.
Great.
There's not enough complaints to warrant it. There's other things
Okay, so thank you
that,
for
that,
voicing your
that they need,
opinion.
and that's it.
Thank you so much, I appreciate that. Okay, anyone else this evening?
Could I just ask you one question?
This is Mr. Johnson again,
Yes, Mr.
correct?
Johnson.
Thank you.
The party that's parking all these trucks that their employees are coming with, are they parked overnight?
The employee, I'm not following exactly what part of the
Okay, like
question.
these gentlemen take their trucks home at night and park them in their driveways. You're saying we have a household that the guy's running a business out of it and his employees are showing up with 5, 6 trucks. Are they parked there overnight, or at the end of the day, do these guys go home and there's one truck left? So I mean,
We have multiple business trucks at the site.
constantly, or?
Sometimes,
overnight,
yeah, sometimes
yes.
they stay overnight, sometimes they don't.
I'm just-
Yeah.
And-
I know, I understand the question you're
Yeah,
asking.
I was just seeing that, you know, I mean, if they're coming during the day, you really can't say. hey,
Correct. But, when someone has 3 vans that are painted identical parked in the driveway.
And I understand what you're going after. I was just trying to find out if they were parked overnight there, or if they were just coming to meet and go to work.
Yeah, no, we have both situations.
Okay.
So, yeah, some where they're overnight, some where the guys meet there.
Okay,
Yeah.
again, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
I got one quick question. then. If I can't incorporate that swale and pull my van into the side of the garage, would you consider arbor vitae screen?
Well, the commercial vehicle would have to be screened if it was in the driveway, but your issue deals with the signage.
And we can talk about signage, because Mr. Hanson raised the signage.
Right, right, and that's something that the committee needs to consider is the size of the signage.
So screening on
Hanson,
the
is your-
side of the driveway?
So because, forget about your swale for a second and your opportunity to park it in the side or rear yard. If a commercial and under this ordinance and under our old ordinance, if a commercial vehicle is parked in the driveway, D plate, or yours might be a B plate, the ordinance calls, if it's commercial, it would need that screening anyway if it was in the driveway. So yeah, you'd have to have it screened.
So I'd have to have the screen.
You'd have to have the screening if you have a commercial vehicle in the driveway, yes.
Okay, so I could put it in the driveway if it's screened.
Yes, based on the type of vehicle it is, but they haven't made a decision about the signage yet. I'm just saying, yeah, yes. A commercial vehicle could be in the driveway as long as it's screened.
That doesn't, what he's saying to you is, you can put it in the driveway and screen it, but that doesn't get you around the signage issue.
Yeah.
You'd still have to get under the signage code. The screening doesn't get you around signage. You follow?
Okay.
So, and we'll
right.
summarize the different issues.
Mr. Gable, I had a quick question for you too. The size of the truck you personally have, is that under 100? The pictures you sent around, is your personal truck that you're referring to pictured in there?
One is very similar, it's the same height, it's just 2 feet shorter than the one that's in the picture. I'll show it to you.
Okay.
Can I get those first? Thank you. So, okay, you know that's legal, the big red one. This is my truck, but 2 feet longer. So my truck's 20 feet, not 18 like I have there. I just have that to show that there's a vehicle, but then there's one, I might want to buy that. It's still banned.
Okay.
Thank you. There was another thing I was gonna say.
Okay.
With Glenn, well, number one, I mean, if anybody's offended by his truck with the signage he has, or the guy across the street that has a dental business, it's a white van with some little lettering on there, but it's not 3 foot long. I mean, it's not obnoxious. None of these vans are. My van, quite honestly, being white and bigger than his, probably looks more obnoxious when you're coming down Willow Road toward Tony's than going west than his van that's parked on the side on Willow.
Mine's gonna really get obnoxious when it's parked almost in the neighbor's yard.
Okay, all right, so thank you.
But my question was, if you don't mind, so I think a lot of people still don't realize that if they have a Chevy Express before the new, well, like the new ones, The Chevy Express only makes 2,500 and 3,500. That's where I was going with this. It's 85, you can't buy a van now that's like a regular size van of years ago that's anything under 8550. They stopped that in 2014. The Chevy Express 1500, which is a half ton, which is the same size as the 3/4 ton and the 1 ton, which go all the way up to 10,000 pounds, they're all the same size, but you can't buy them anymore. So now you run the risk of someone in 2015, they have a regular Chevy Express van that's a 25 or a 3,500. It's either 8550 or it goes up to 9,000 pounds. That should be a D plate. Someone can snitch on them. You guys come around and look at their tag on the manufacturer, and they should have a D plate, according to you, which I understand, but it's crossing a line with these vans now.
Okay, so,
So that's important.
thank you. All right, so I would want to just summarize quickly to make sure we've covered the topics. Right, so the first item presented would be to revisit the box truck definition. The second item would be to discuss or revisit the quantity of signage in the proposed amendment. And I think other than that, were there any?
Is there anybody else that wants to speak? Otherwise, we should,
I would like to ask something.
Okay, if you could,
because we should close the public.
yeah, because we're going to.
My name is Lucas Felinchak, 204 Tully Place, and I have a big truck, a small short. It's a Ford Transit with the letters. Of course, it's white, so I took all the surface to have my number visible, my company name. So it's not allowed in my driveway, yes, because the letters are big. We don't know the size yet, but my question is, because most of my work is not in Prospect Heights. It's in Evanston, Winnetka City, and I would like to have my letters and my phone number, my company name visible all the time. When I got back home, can I put the white magnet on my van, and it's not visible?
Yes,
completely?
absolutely.
That's my question. So that might be solution for me, yes?
That's your solution.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so if there's no one else here this evening to speak during our public hearing, then I would like a motion to close the public hearing on application number ZBA 17-13TA.
So moved. Second.
Voice vote, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so this would be an opportunity now for the commissioners to discuss the feedback we've got this evening in relationship to what's being proposed. So does someone want to take the lead on sharing their thoughts?
I'll start with, I got things of both. The box truck, I think that if we can put in, my suggestion is if the difference between a box truck and a regular van, as long as it's within that height restriction we have of 109 inches, I think something that we should consider. Because the box trucks I would not like to see are the big ones that look like moving trucks.
Okay.
That's just my personal opinion of the box truck. Based on the pictures Mr. Gable sent, that seems like that's not a big difference between that and a Sprinter van. As long as you're allowed to have one in the driveway, that would seem acceptable to me.
So Mike, in here, in the proposed changes, where do we identify the size and?
So the height that we went with was 110 inches, and we're using the 12,000
Okay.
pounds.
So it's under one,
Let's back up. Where we would start,
Okay.
Chairman Dash, is under definitions, commercial vehicle for the box truck, I think. Custom work van would be appropriate change. And then they're prohibited if they are outside the height and weight restrictions as stated in the code. I think that would be a good way to summarize that, and I could work on that language.
okay, so under commercial vehicle definition number 4, the box truck definition there would be revised.
We'll come back in a minute to that, okay?
Okay, Any other,
Can I ask,
Regarding,
can I ask Mr. Fang a question?
Mr. Fang?
How, do you know how tall your box truck is? 26. That's, what ends up happening, and I'm just gonna, please, is that you start seeing multiple higher racks on other equipment. And then on the height restriction, and that's.
Well, Mr. Fang is already,
But right now, you're
Complying.
well, you're not in the open on your driveway.
right. So this,
Oh, I've been by your house, I know where it is, I went and checked it out, and it's very well done, tastefully done.
okay, any other suggestions or comments from the commissioners?
maybe
I just would like
regarding,
to mention that box trucks are also mentioned in another section besides the definitions. They're on the second page under E, just so we know that that needs to be modified also.
So we would change that from box trucks to custom work vans.
Whatever turns you on, as long as it's legal.
Well, I'm just trying to get some commonality of language.
Well, it does sound a lot better. Sounds like a working man's
But we're-
van, not a.
On E,
Right, but we're saying right now that,
box trucks.
right, that 4 is prohibited, so you'll have to,
We're gonna
Reword.
we're gonna reword
Right.
that, isn't, they're not,
they would be, custom work trucks would be allowed.
within, as long
Right.
as they met the parameters of size and designation, okay?
Under vehicle height.
And then we'd then edit A1E, where it talks about the strict prohibited parking of them. So we'll work on that one.
Okay.
I don't have language for that, but we'll work on it.
Should we now go to the quantity of signage?
Is that everything, Mike, related to the box truck that you saw?
Yeah, I believe those are the two
Oh,
sections.
those were the two sections, okay, thank you.
yeah, regarding signage, would it be, could we consider consolidating the 3 signs into a single sign of a 3x6 if there's no other violations, being weight or height of the vehicle, instead of having 3 little signs, 3 2x3s, have 1 3x6, which is 18 or something of that size.
Well, here's my question on signage. Here's my point on signage. You have to think of it this way. Signage in a commercial setting is limited. What stops a person from parking his van in front and putting signage on his van and leaving his van there? To be the business there. And that's really what we're stopping. You know what I'm saying? And I understand Mr. Hanson has a van that sits right off of Willow, and that's where he gets some potential out of his business. But you've got to think of it as a whole. If you allow someone to use their vehicle as signage, what stops it? What's the difference in being on a house and just putting it right there? Putting a sign on your house, in front of your garage. It's the same thing, in my opinion. If you're leaving your van there for signage, to get publicity for your company, it's the same as putting a sign on your house. Whether it's movable or not, it's the same. So you've got to keep it in, that's my perspective on it. And we're not living in a commercial area, we're living in a residential area. We're not driving down streets looking for restaurants, and we're looking and going home to rest. So I don't think you should see signage. So we have to limit it, that's my opinion on it. So if we don't restrict the size, I think you're allowing people to use their front yards as the same as a commercial area where, put a McDonald's sign out front if you're selling burgers, you know? There's got to be a limitation to it. So that's my perspective on it.
Neil, can
I
you
do-
speak to how the 2x3 was arrived at in committee?
If I remember correctly, that seemed to be, I don't remember exactly how it came into it, but I think that seemed to be a reasonable size where doesn't stand out from the street.
But the business
So
owner,
I
the
would-
business owners that were represented on the committee felt like that was a reasonable suggestion as well.
Right, but if you think about like a real estate sign in front of someone's house that's selling a house, I think that's about the size. Or smaller.
2 foot by 3 foot.
Yeah, it's 2 foot through, so that's the consistency when you see, if I remember correctly, Dan, that's what we talked about, right? It was if you do a home business, that's kind of what you allowed
The,
front.
the discussion came is what would, if someone was allowed to hang a little shingle on the front of their house, what would they be permitted to have to advertise a home occupation, a home occupation? And then the discussion grew, well, that's a small size for just one side of a vehicle, so then it was, what would be reasonable, 3 sides? Well, if you got a math equation, 2 by 3 times 3, came close to what that would be allowed on a house for advertising. So, could there be a little wiggle room? Maybe it's 24 square feet in cumulative size, or 18. But I think the discussion at the committee is that the members thought that 18 square feet was a little bit smaller than what a home occupation could have if they put a sign out in the front, but not,
Right, and the 2 foot by 3 foot too would also align with, if you were to put on the door of your truck, that would be about the right size. So you could have both doors lettered on each side of a pickup truck, and then you could also have something on the back. So that was sort of how the rationale came about.
well, that was a recommendation. The committee doesn't mean it has to be.
Right.
If we feel that the ZBA feels it.
I think that there needs to be some restriction on signage. I'm wondering if maybe it makes more sense just to limit the total square footage, because, if you have just print on the back of your tailgate all the way across, that's 6 inches high, but it's 5 feet across, that would technically be out of code, correct?
6 feet,
6
6 inches by 5 feet?
It's not 2 by 3. It would exceed
Well,
the
yeah,
3.
I think. If-
6 square feet of sign area. So
that would
to
be
Bruce's
10.
point, do we strike the 2 by 3 and just leave 6 foot of sign area on up to 3 sides? So then the dimension of the lettering could be triangular or rectangular, but still allow 6 square feet of,
Can I ask Mr. Hanson a question?
Mr. Hanson. Question.
I'd like to ask you a question, please. Just on, and this is just for clarification. Would you, in estimation, you think you're right at, I know you're bigger than 18 square feet total when you add up all the lettering. You think 24 square feet is more in line with where you're at?
24 square feet?
Total, if you went around and,
I would imagine if I crunched it all up into one big blob, yeah,
Do you have a wrap? Does he have a wrap?
no, he's
No,
got
it's not
real
a
nice
wrap.
lettering
Is your
that are
van here?
spaced.
Is your van outside?
I can go and take a picture and shoot it to the committee on Friday, but his is tastefully done, it's not a wrap, it's not that. But I just was wondering, because, that I'm just throwing it up as a possible, that's an example that someone could see. And so I was thinking, is 24 the right number, or is 18 the right number?
yeah, I really couldn't tell you how many square feet
Okay,
There.
that's fair.
there is. I mean, I just know that I can't change it, so I'd have to somehow deal with moving it to the side. I don't know how I do it.
We're
Thank
trying to
you.
figure it out.
Well, back to my point, I think 18 is a good number, because I don't think we should have the residential area, your place where you advertise your business. I think you want to limit that, I really do. If you're driving around, it's easy, magnets fix all the problems, as that gentleman said. If you're driving around, take your magnets off, you get your business advertised, but not in your driveway.
So Mr. Hanson could come home and put magnets over a certain percentage of the lettering
If you so choose, yes.
and leave the lettering exactly the way it is.
Pardon me?
So if the proposed changes are made and your vehicle exceeds 18 square feet, you could cover the signage with a magnet when you got home at night, and you wouldn't have to change the lettering to your vehicle at all. Right.
Well, why don't I just throw a blue tarp over the thing?
So, does that work, Mike? I don't know. Right, so,
No,
Right.
no.
okay, so are there any other feedback from the commissioners on the signage in regards to the signage area? not exceeding 18 square feet. Any other comments or proposals? Does anyone else think it should be increased or remain the way as it's written?
The only comment I would have is if they were to advertise their home occupation, they could have 24 square feet.
Okay, so Dan would be proposing to increase it to
That would be the only, be
24.
consistent between,
I think that's fair. I mean, if you're allowed to sign on your garage for 24 square feet, if we're looking at these as analogous situations where you're advertising your business, one way or the other, it should be equal, I think.
So is it 6, and when you say 24, Dad, is it 8 per side or 20 for total?
I would look at,
On a home?
well, at a home typically you're getting one, and most of them are smaller, much smaller than that. I think we only have one, and that's a small one, but it's allowed to have the 24 and square feet
On the front?
in the yard, or the house, yeah.
Okay.
I double check those parameters, but,
Okay.
Okay.
no.
So we're saying
Up to 24 square feet, but are we still
8
going,
for-
yeah,
8
are we
per
still
side.
gonna,
I think it should be 8%.
8 per side, 24 total, yes.
8, 8, and 8, so 8 side, 8 side, 8 back?
And do we eliminate the X by Y, meaning do we only restrict the total
That's up
square
to-
footage?
Let's talk to Mike about that. How hard is it for you to enforce if we take that?
Because 8 square feet, that's 1 foot by 8 feet long, that's a long sign, you can see that from anywhere.
You can, from my perspective, you can take out the 2x3 or the 2x4, whatever you're gonna use for that, and just leave it as a square footage.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we would strike the actual size limits, but keep the 8 square foot of sign area.
Per side.
Okay, and up to 3 sides. So it would read, commercial signage area shall be limited in area, 8 square feet of sign area on up to 3 sides of the vehicle, with the total signage area not to exceed 24 square feet. So we're removing the reference to the 2 foot by 3 foot and just leaving the square footage.
Yeah, I can deal with those on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thanks for the feedback, Mike. Any other comments on the area of signage? Okay. So I believe between the definition for the box truck and the quantity of signage, those were specific comments to the ordinance as proposed. I know that a few other residents commented in general on why we're doing this, and I think Dan and some of the commissioners did a good job explaining where this came from and trying to protect our residential district, but yet still allowing the hardworking people of Prospect Heights to come home, park their vehicles, and not be impacted.
If I
So-
could,
Not right now.
Yeah.
Okay. We're in discussion at
Yeah.
the,
okay,
thank
but I
you.
just think there's still something being left out, if you can let me, but otherwise, no, that's fine.
The public hearing's been
It
closed.
won't have nothing to do with me, but I think it's very important. But-
And we are a recommending body, so this will, again, go to city council in the event we make a recommendation this evening. So is there any other discussion from the commissioners?
I'd like to make a comment to the public, maybe that, this code is not only, it's a revision to the existing code, and one of the main reasons for making this revision is for Mike to be able to enforce it. With clear guidelines, it's easier to, to dispute it or to enforce it. With, with gray language, it's very difficult. It's frustrating for, for us residents as well as for officers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Correct. Okay. So then,
What is the recommendation we're making on the box, the custom work vans? What's the recommended language, Dan?
For the definitions, I would go that, and not just because it's written here, I'll read it as it's written. Box truck is a box-like shaped design, also known as a custom work van, and others. They're straight. So we'll add that to the definition so that we're clear there. Then under the section, A1E, the box trucks and the other defined names, are allowed to park in in the open, consistent with the other language, on the driveway, in the open on the driveway in the R1 district, as long as they meet the height and plate requirements.
So,
Clear as mud.
under that definition, we would be allowing U-Haul style
As long
box
as they were
trucks?
under 110
If they
inches.
were under that size and weight restriction?
And they would have to be height, weight, signage, attachments, you could have, in Mr. Gable's situation, his is 2 feet under that, he could put technically a ladder rack on it and still be under the 110. But that's, so that,
Can you throw a grandfather clause in there for existing vehicles?
No.
The proposal is that there would be a 1-year moratorium on enforcement to allow and work with residents on the signage and on the other things. And we would work with people during this time. We don't want to just come out and just take it, that's not the intention. That was never the intention. So we would work with those folks.
Wasn't Mr. Figs fall underneath the ordinance though? He would.
He should be fine. I will clarify that, but he should be in the,
I think with your truck being parked in the back, you're still fine.
we would look at the, well, with changing this, we'll change it for parked in the open on the driveway. So yours is not on the driveway. And then we'll have to work on, and then yours does, I don't believe yours has signage on it. It's very small. Yeah, okay. So that is, it would allow Mr. Gable to have his on the front, and allow yours in the back. Okay. And I'll clean that language up for the minutes.
Okay, so should I proceed with staff review and the additional evidence, or?
Yes. And I do have some additional items that were sent in.
Okay, so I'd like a motion, please, to receive into the public record the staff review of compliance of this application with the zoning standards as presented by staff this evening, and to make these standards a part of the official record for the application.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Voice vote? All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and now we'll need a motion to receive into the public record the following documents.
Letter dated April 19th, 2018, from Mr. Kevin Fang to 10 East Marion, Prospect Heights, who did speak tonight, opposing the sections related to the box trucks, which all of you have received. Also, a letter dated February 27th, 2018, by Ms. Pryor on 1015 East Wildwood Drive. She voiced both opposing some sections, but supporting some suggestions due to the number of commercial vehicles. So that is here. And then Mr. Gable did have an email to me that we spoke about, and Mr. Hanson, yes, in Mr. Hanson's letter of February 24th.
Yeah, and
Mr.
Mr.
Gable's
Gable's photos.
So, and those other ones were brought
I
in
think
earlier.
that was all of them.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I would need a motion then to please receive those into the public record.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so now this is when we need to make the motion to recommend these text amendments. So Dan, did you want to maybe state that for the record?
Okay, let me find my other page. See if I can get this on the last page. Okay, it doesn't matter, last page doesn't matter on this. For consideration, approval of amendments to the City of Prospect Heights zoning code section 5-2-3 definitions as presented and as amended for the box trucks.
Okay.
And the second motion, it's part of this, so we're amending section 5-2-3 definitions, and then recommending approval of recommendations for section 5-2-8 as presented with the change to section A1E related to box trucks will be allowed to be parked or stored in the open and R1 residential district as long as they meet the requirements for height, weight, and signage.
Right. And then also 3,
And then also for 3A, commercial signage shall be limited to a size not to exceed 8 square feet per side, or 8 square feet on up to 3 sides of the vehicle, with a total signage area not to exceed 24 square feet.
Dan, just to clarify, I think you might have reversed a couple numbers there. It's 5-8-2, I think. When you made the motion to
Yeah,
put it in
I'm sorry.
record, you said 5-2-8.
I'm sorry, thank
I
you.
just wanted to clarify that
Thank you,
we'll get all the,
for the record.
appreciate it.
thank you, Commissioner Mellon. Stickler for details, thank you. Okay, so I would need a motion from the board to someone need to make a motion to recommend, or,
Motion to recommend.
okay, as presented by Director Peterson?
As direct, yes.
Okay,
I will second.
great. So Jen, could you please make a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Tammon.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Mellon.
Aye.
And Chairman Dash.
Aye. Okay, so this matter will appear before the city council.
This will be sent to legal, and I am projecting this will be sent to city council at the May 28th meeting for first reading and consideration, because this will be rewritten by council and reviewed.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have one item of new business this evening.
Thank you, folks, for
So,
all your
yeah, so-
input.
Danielle,
Yes.
I would be willing to take
Right.
truck questions
Oh,
upstairs.
Yeah, so Mike will be here to
second.
take questions
Go ahead.
Stay upstairs.
upstairs. There is another case on our agenda this evening, so if you'd like to leave, now would be a good time. If you'd like to stay, then fantastic. But we're going to have another case. Okay? And I'm going to read,
Well done.
Thank
Nice-
you.
Nice exhibits.
okay, so switcheroo here.
Yeah, I gotta grab other stuff. I got it right here.
Oh, here, my bad.
Overturned for misread.
Really?
So,
Okay,
people are looking to cut your legs off.
okay, so our first item of new business is public hearing, case number ZBA 18-06V. The applicant is Jerry Mazinski at 211 South Gale Court, Prospect Heights, Illinois, 60070. And the applicant is seeking a variation to allow the construction of an addition to a primary structure to encroach into a side yard due to hardship caused by existing lot conditions. Should I open the public hearing? Or are you going to go first?
Open, you can go ahead and open.
Okay, so let's go ahead. I need a motion, please, to open the public hearing on application number ZBA 18-06V.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so if you're here this evening to speak to this case, I can swear everyone in at the same time. And then when you come forward, you just need to state your name and address for the record. Okay? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Okay, Director Peterson.
The case before you tonight on South Gale is a situation where a detached garage was permitted to be built, and originally the determination was that that was a buildable side yard. Once the structure was built, it was determined that that was actually a front yard and not allowed, the detached garage was not allowed. And therefore, the city notified the owner. The owner has exercised his right to seek a variation and is proposing to incorporate the existing detached garage into his primary structure as a full addition to the house, which with the 5-foot side yard variation would be allowed to be built in that existing front yard area. Hardships on the property are that the lot is only 87 feet wide in the rear. It's instead of the 100 square or lineal feet of width. When asked to relocate, if you could move it to the back, his well is right in the middle of his side yard and would also need a variation to construct a driveway to the rear yard. And so the applicant is seeking the relief for the 5-foot side yard variation for this, to incorporate the building into his primary structure.
So the encroachment is 5 foot 6 inches into
Correct.
the required 15-foot side yard setback.
Correct. The applicant is here to give testimony. There's enlarged site plan and rendering of what the final house with the addition will look like, and that's all I have.
Great. So if you'd like to come up and present your case, please.
Sure. Again, Jerry Mushinsky, 211 South Gale Court. Pretty much, obviously I need a garage. I get a couple fines about my trailer. I also have a van, which is kind of part of the previous discussion. And I would like to put in a garage. So obviously, garage in the back, not a good option because pretty much I have a well on the way, and the backyard is kind of not as wide as as the front. So that's one thing. I would like to have it on the side. I would like to put evergreen trees all around to just have like a green screening all around. What else I can add? That's pretty much it. I would like to have pretty much the 5 feet which we're asking in the back will be completely enclosed by the evergreen bushes, which I would like to get them as a 5-footer as in the backyard, and in my backyard they grow in 4 years about 3 feet. So I assume in about 4 years most of this garage will disappear anyway.
Okay.
So I have a question. So in the event you would have made your initial application and the city would have identified that the freestanding garage in your front yard would not have been permitted, would you have built onto your existing brick garage?
Second,
So in the event the city said you're not allowed to build a freestanding garage in your front yard, would you have pursued adding a third and or 4 stall?
yes, pretty much. I would like to connect that garage with the rest of the house as a part of the house.
But in the beginning, if the
in the
Construction
beginning,
had
before I build it.
Right.
I mean, before I build it, I already put 25,000 in it. So I'm trying to look for a solution not to lose of it. And I believe the best solution right now will be adding that to the house. If I know on the very beginning that I'm not allowed to build a garage in that spot, maybe I'll decide to move it slightly and fit that in the building line, kind of. But still, probably I'll look for variations because anyway, I will not fit two-car garage there, as I see it. So.
So if the variation is not approved this evening, or if our recommendation is not to approve the variation, and the city council upholds our recommendation, your plan would be to?
Cut down that 5 feet somehow.
Okay, so you would keep the existing structure in place, connect it to your home, and then remove the 5.5 or
Yes,
5.5 feet?
I still will build the addition between this garage and the house. And I will cut off that 5 feet, which is kind of a question mark today.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant before we open it for public comment? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so if you're here this evening to speak to the case, you can come up now.
I'm Arlene Kiefer. I live directly behind this house. And
your address, Arlene?
211 Waterman.
211 Waterman, okay. Thank you.
And my neighbor is 301, and there's big difference in address. But the postman said, when we built our house, pick your address. We've been there 62 years. The next door neighbor in 301 has a big problem with flooding in the early spring, and it comes into my yard too, where my grandchildren go floating on ropes, on rafts in the yard. Is this going to affect me with all this building? I understand you have to do what you have to do, but I don't want to be having water.
Okay.
And the sump pumps are running constantly when we have a rainy season.
Okay. Ma'am, just so I understand, so I can answer the question, you live directly to
Here.
the east on?
No, she lives
I thought, are
west
you on
Waterman.
Water, are you on?
So her
Waterman?
backyard.
Oh, is on.
She's here, so
She's
her
in-
house faces Waterman
Okay.
this way.
The city engineer has gone out to the site. He has inspected the manhole cover and the existing drain and has looked at the amount of roof line and has determined that that won't add any more water. He did make the opinion that the existing storm drain, whenever it was put in basically flat and does not drain the water really effectively. Due to the fact that it was not on the city's list of drainage improvements because of based on the number of complaints, it did get missed. However, he is adding it to the future because it does pool on North Gale. So that is going to be addressed. But in his opinion, the city engineer, this work will not change that.
I was just concerned with all the buildings on the property. It's going to not be draining into.
Right, not only is it the
grass.
building, but it's the driveway. You can see that there'll be a substantial amount of new concrete driveway added as well.
Yeah, will it, Prospect Heights help me and my neighbors if we run into this water problem?
The city engineer will be putting a recommendation to try and address the existing, because he did in his opinion say the existing storm pipe that runs between South Gale Court and North Gale Court is not correct, okay? And that the swale on the north side too is too flat, and that's why it puddles there, because the water does flow to the north. But because it's flat and doesn't move, I think there was water coming over. So yes, the city will be looking into
Just
that.
as long as they're protecting us. We've lived there since
Mhm.
50-some years, 58 years.
So yes, we did look at the water and we're working on a plan, but
Yeah,
the opinion of the engineer was that this would not add significant water to the problem that's already
the
existing.
storm sewer goes to Willow Road, doesn't it?
It goes towards Willow, but I
It was
think in
supposed to
30,
go there when they,
it ends like at 303 or 305 North Gale, and then the natural swale, the natural ditch was supposed to take it from there. However, over the years, it has not done that, so it has been identified now, and we will be working on it.
Gale Street, Court, whatever, was a farm field. And they built up with the houses. And we've had water ever since their houses have been there.
So it's
In a
noted,
bad way,
Right.
spring in there. But the sump pumps are running constantly when that happens. I figured they have to have rain has to have.
Right, so it sounds like based on the site evaluation that we have identified some storm sewer that could be pitched properly to help the drainage situation. And it doesn't sound like it's going to be something that's going to be done day one, but it will be identified by the city on a bigger picture, long-term.
Well,
I don't know what the plan is, but
based on his opinion, he's going to be moving it to the top of the priority list, okay? So
so other than the drainage concern, do you have any other concerns with what the applicant is proposing in regards to the structure or the landscaping?
No, just so I don't flood.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Alex Drozd, 280 West Fremont, Elmhurst, Illinois. I am the trustee of the trust that owns the house directly next door to the north, 301 North Gale Court. So just wanted to say that my father bought that house in 1980. We had no issues with the city going forward. He passed away in September, and we've been attempting to sell the house. A few weeks after we put the house up for sale, the garage showed up. Wasn't really aware that it was permitted, anything like that. All the mail from the house at 301 gets forwarded to me. I saw nothing of a permit or any kind of notice.
Correct,
that
because
something was going to be built.
because the initial permit for the freestanding garage was under the impression that the applicant didn't need any variations to do that.
Right. So
Correct.
since then, since the structure has gone up, it has been a huge deterrent for buyers. So when we noticed that, it was there, did look into it and found that it was technically against the zoning codes, and I called Dan and spoke with him, and he looked into it, and I guess, the process kind of stopped at that point. We've had multiple viewers come to this house, look at it, say, what is that thing next door, and really just immediately turn out and walk away. We don't have pictures of it on our listing, or on our old listing, but when they get there, it's a deterrent. It's unsightly, as is. So I know that original permit was granted in error, and now that I now have a house that should sell for around $550, valued at about $510, I think. And we can't even entertain even the inkling of an offer for around, anything more than, I think, 450 is what people are kind of hinting that they would make an offer at.
So in regards to what they, okay,
That's all right.
that's okay.
And again, I understand his position as well. And he was all under the guise that he could easily build this garage and not have a problem with it. And now he's stuck, and now I'm stuck. I think the drawings, it kind of makes a fix, because now that it's attached, he can be permitted to build in that area. However, it does encroach 5 feet into the
Right, side yard setback.
yeah. So it's 5 feet too close to our lot. The idea of screening it with arborvitaes, I think, is great. However, you've got a 13, 14-foot garage with a 5-foot arborvitae. Anybody driving down the street sees that thing, it sticks out like a sore thumb. I would ask, at least require 8-foot arborvitaes to be put in, so that can be screened a lot better, at least on the north end, or what borders my property. And if there's any way that we can make those go in prior to construction, so I can get this house back on the market, and or have some form of guarantee that those are going to go in as part of the construction of this, would be extremely helpful.
So I guess I would ask for your opinion. So as an adjacent property owner, are you, if the applicant installs the landscaping, are you amicable to the encroachment? What's your opinion?
Amicable?
Because we need your feedback to help make a decision, so you need to
Right.
be honest with us to let us know
So
what your feeling is.
I'm not happy with it. I don't think it looks good. I think it really wrecks the sight lines of the property and of the street. I don't know if you've seen it or, live or not, but.
I live 2 doors away.
Right, I figured.
Yeah.
Question for you, so I guess her question is, his 2 options are, the garage itself stays and gets attached to the house.
Right.
But the 5 feet that encroach closer to your house, does that bother you? I guess that's the question, right?
Right, because we can,
It would bother.
Does that 5 feet make a difference to you if it's off 5 feet closer?
Absolutely. I mean, it makes a difference, but I don't see how, if you cut the back of that garage off, what could you even do with it? It wouldn't even be deep enough to put a car in there, would it?
No.
So.
it would be storage.
I mean, the 5 feet, you mentioned sight lines from the street and stuff.
Right.
Does that affect your sight? And I know, I drove by today.
Absolutely, it does. I mean, if you look out the windows, or when you come down North Gale Court or even South Gale Court, it blocks the whole view. You used to be able to see the whole way down.
But the 5 feet wouldn't make a difference to that, right? Because that's perpendicular.
The 5 feet towards my house, that would not make a
That's
difference, as far as the sight lines go, unless you're in front of my house and just looking at it. I mean, it's very close to the lot line. If the variance is not granted, though, I'm even more concerned about how long this is going to drag on, as far as time frame as to how long it would take him to reconstruct it or take it down and get my house back on the market and get a fair price for it, is what it's worth. And I don't know if there's any kind of clean answer for that at all.
So you would leaning towards approving it because you feel that would prevent you from further delays from the project being constructed?
Absolutely. It's the lesser of 2 evils is what I'm stuck with here. So if it's granted, and if it's not going to affect the flood lines, and if, the city of Prospect Heights is going to do what they say they're going to do and come back in the future and fix that horrible drainage problem that's been there since 1980 when we moved in, That's great. What I would ask, though, is as soon as humanly possible before this, before the construction starts, is at least on that lot line, to screen that construction site out better, to put 8-foot arborvitaes in instead of 5-foot. And that would just, it would help me out. I think it would definitely, it'll screen the area out. I think the neighbors would be able, I don't want to speak for any other neighbors besides myself, though, but I think that's maybe your best option out of a real sticky situation.
Okay. Anything else to add, Alex? No. Any other questions for?
Could I ask Director Peterson? It's my understanding that I've built numerous houses in Prospect Heights over the years. Since the garage would be attached to the house, theoretically, he could go up 30 feet.
In that area of the yard attached to the house, the maximum height he could go is 2 stories or 30 feet. However, we'd have to take a look at how it integrated with the rest of the house.
But I understand it.
But
That I do understand that, but once it's attached to the house, it could be 30 feet. So it would affect you if it was built properly in the first place, if he attached it to the house. So you'd still have this wall. I've had numerous neighbors on either side of projects that I did, that they came home and saw a 30-foot wall next to them, and they went to the building department and complained. I was within the code. He was put into a situation that really he didn't intend on being in this situation from day one. But by attaching it to the house, he could actually go 30 feet. So you can't ask him to put 30-foot arborvitaes to hide it.
No, I'm not asking.
But I want you to understand that there is a height requirement in Prospect Heights that is 30 feet.
Right.
I'm just stating a fact. I'm
Okay.
not arguing with you or whatever, but as far as, I think by screening it, we're actually creating more of, a hardship for him, and he has a hardship to begin with.
He already has that in his plan, though.
No, I understand
to
that, but
the
and he's
arborvitaes.
willing to put in arborvitaes, but who's to say that he puts in the arborvitaes and they die? Are we gonna then enforce him to go back and put more arborvitaes? I mean,
Well, that's part of the plan, though, isn't it?
But
To have this landscaping
and tell me if I'm
screen,
wrong,
right?
Director Peterson, landscaping is really not a code requirement to build a house.
That is correct. However, due to the fact that he's requesting a variation and a relief from the strict writing of the code, it could be a condition that the landscaping as proposed shall be maintained, and it would be incorporated in.
8-footers versus 5-footers or 6-footers. 6-footers are pretty much not that expensive. But 8-footers versus 6-footers, that's like 4 times price. I would rather put 5 or 6-footers instead of 8-footers because pretty much there's like additional 5 or 6 grand from my pocket, and I'm already in a situation where I have to put way more than I was planning on the very beginning. And my first idea of the garage was 18.5, and we cut that to 15 because there wasn't meeting the code. I'm not gonna raise it up. That's for sure. It's gonna stay as a 15-footer. No matter what, what I can say, I can put those evergreen trees before I even go any farther with the garage, and that's probably gonna help you a lot with selling the place.
Yeah. We're talking like time frame.
Alec,
Sorry.
we're up here.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to have this up here. I'm sorry. Your question was the requirement of screening.
Correct.
Because it was a variation, the commission, PZBA, could recommend as part of the approval that the landscaping be installed as depicted or agreed and shall be maintained, and that would become part of the ordinance for the variation, so it has more weight for enforcement.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Alex, I have another question for you. In Director Peterson's zoning review, he said that, I'm trying to look here. that the applicant has other outdoor storage along his north portion of the property line and then a shed in back. And part of what Director Peterson is suggesting is that as a board, we could make it a condition that the applicant wouldn't be allowed any additional storage on his property other than this garage addition he'd be building. So
would he have to tear his shed down?
The Rubbermaid
Oh,
shed and those
Yeah.
types of things.
So, yeah, so,
that would go away, right?
right, so does that shed offend you as a neighboring?
Well, it's not very, I'm not offended by it, however, it is unsightly.
Okay.
And it just is what it is.
And for the
That's my opinion.
And for the record, the applicant, when we met with him after the application and the report was done, has agreed to bring that stuff into the garage because he'll have the place to store it
Once it's built.
once it's built.
Yeah. Can we get the garage down? Or the shed down?
Okay.
Back up here.
Alex, yeah.
Up here, Alex, this way,
Up here.
this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, questions to the PZ chairman and the commission, and then back, we'll go back, so.
Okay, so do you have anything else to add? So we'll see if there's other public comment tonight.
Right. No, and I did want to make sure that I heard correctly, so it is, the variance is 5 feet, right? Not
It's in-
15 inches?
It's
5
encroaching 5 foot 6 inches
Okay.
into the required 15-foot side yard.
Yep, okay, perfect.
4.5.
I used,
Not according to the plat.
according to your plat, it shows that,
We measured that on site with arrow and.
well, we have to, and we will clarify this, but there's a couple other items. Your surveyor, you need to call your surveyor and we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Could I make one other clarification real
For
quick?
Alex or
No,
for?
for Director Peters?
Okay, then
Yes.
if you're, let's
Yeah.
see if Alex is done with his,
I have no further
okay,
comments.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
If he proposed, and I'm just throwing this out as a scenario, if he wanted that garage in his backyard, he could be within 5 feet of the side setback, could he not?
Correct.
As a detached garage.
Yes, and as a
As a detached,
detached,
right,
in
as
the,
a
in a permitted rear yard, he could have gone as close as 5
5 feet
foot
in
side yard.
side
lot line.
and back line.
Right, pending he was granted a variance to access the rear yard, because he doesn't have, there's not enough
Room.
No,
room.
but I'm
Right.
just saying that if he would have had a garage in the backyard,
And
it would be 5 feet from the lot lines.
Could be.
So this variance is, yes, it's a side variance, but it would be even closer if it was in the backyard.
And it could have almost been closer now, however, the applicant chose to keep it 10 feet instead of 5 feet.
Okay.
On the original detached permit,
Which would have needed a variance,
even a larger variance.
larger variance. Okay, so is there anyone else here this evening to speak to the case?
Hi, James Allen Ford, 209 South Gale Court. So I'm the neighbor just to the south of Jerry. And I just want to say I have no animosity toward my neighbor or anything like that. We're friends. I like Jerry very much. I do not like this very much at all. I did not like the original detached plan. I assumed it was to code because it went up, and then I find out that there was a village made a mistake in permitting it, and so really a lot of folks probably are the victim of that original mistake in a lot of ways, in that Jerry is going to be out money regardless, it seems like to me, and is it okay if I walk over here?
Yeah,
a little
absolutely.
bit?
If you want to bring them closer, that's fine too.
Yes. They were put out of the way because of the first case.
So. first and foremost, if he proposed that, I'd be like, cool, that's not so bad. Yeah, that's not so bad. And this is probably what should have been proposed in the first place. As an extension to the existing garage, it would still look like a residential structure, and it would be great. But then, you know, we cut down a nice tree and plopped this thing in there. My wife was livid, extremely angry. Like, ever since that went in there, she can't talk about anything more, because she's in the home a lot of times. She has some students come and go. So she thinks it's an eyesore. And then the work stopped, and she got more and more upset. Why isn't it at least finishing? You know, it's just a pile of mud and an open garage. And then we found out about the hearing to extend, to make it an attached garage. And so there's another drawing. This is actually the most flattering.
The other, if you flip this one around, I believe, no, the one you were at first, if you just turn it around.
Gotcha. That's what it really looks like, right there. And Jerry, I wish you could just, you know, that's what we see, and I wish you could just have that, or maybe a little more like that, but it kind of looks like that motel on the end of the street, right on Grand Road, and open. It's so long and out of proportion, and I feel really sorry for the gentleman who's trying to sell his house, because he's looking at the back of that too. So I know that you're very limited in what you can do. All you can make is a yay or a nay, and Jerry's well within his rights to, you know, as the other commissioner said, just lop off this back part and then, you know, do that, and that's it. I understand all that, but I just thought I had to say my piece, and that aesthetically, I think that we have to consider some aesthetic codes maybe in this city, because, you know, it's not aesthetic. It's you know, it doesn't look like a residential home the way it's proposed. It looks more like what it's going to be is an extension of a business. And I just don't. I do have flooding issues every time it rains. At the end of my driveway, I get a great big lake every time. And I don't know if you've done any. I know the lady on Waterman is concerned about water coming this way. But I always have a lot of water right in mine, because I'm in the cul-de-sac here, so I get a lot of pooling here. And I can't imagine it's going to get any better with all that runoff. So there was a large tree that was removed, and a lot of ground cover that won't be there anymore. So the water's, it's not magic. It's going to come my way or their way, and that's it. And Jerry, like I said, I just had to say my piece. I don't know what else. I don't know what else can be done, but if I was like Bill Gates and I could write you a check, I'd say, hey dude, you know, knock that thing down and just come out here a little bit further if you need the 2-car garage additional, you know, one more bay there, you'd be great. And I don't know what the price difference for you would be to do exactly that, because if you don't get your variance, you're gonna have a lot of expense lopping off the back of this thing and a halfway useless attached garage there too because of that. So I don't know if you've done the math on what it would be to get rid of that and then just make this, you know, either a single bay or a bay and a half or something, what the math is on that. I'd like to hear it, but again, I think I'm done. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. So pretty much,
yeah,
sorry. So pretty much getting back to that is, of course, aesthetic is very subjective. You might not like it. And I totally agree. If I will build one from the very beginning, probably will not look exactly like that. But the dormer on that garage changes a lot. And physically, I don't have a problem with that, and in my opinion, looks fine. Besides that, because you mentioned that I took the tree down. Yes, I had to, because pretty much they couldn't be there because the tree was right in the middle. So what I would like to do, I would like to put 2 or 3 trees in the front. So pretty much part of that, when you are driving through the gale, will be covered anyway. And also those evergreens, I would like to turn a little bit that way as well and put those trees. So aesthetic is, everybody can have a word about that, but most of that from the Gale Court side will be covered anyway by the trees.
What about screening between the two houses? Do you feel that a row of arborvitae between the two would help?
There's really nowhere to put them.
It's relatively
Well,
not much space.
There's 16 feet.
I mean,
He's right there because his driveway comes in.
they will shrink the area a little bit.
3 feet.
But if they will be necessary, I can consider that as well.
You actually would only to shield his home from them. You would, the only thing you could really do is
Jim, maybe you
shield-
could refer to the map behind you so we can look at that
Yeah,
plan
so,
view. Like if the trees were to start.
There's already a tree here, and I just had to remove a dead tree here. You know, this, you can't put trees here. I mean, this would just start lifting his driveway in mine.
I mean, if I have to,
Maybe to here, if there's already a tree right here, there's really no.
So you don't feel that there's an opportunity to put plant materials there to screen
Unless he
the view?
removed this part of the driveway, you know, because this is the street, this is driveway, this is actually grass, but then I think on that line, I don't know, you know, where my driveway begins, but they're not too far apart, I mean, really, so, I don't think it would help.
So could the existing driveway be modified now that the new concrete driveway is being added to minimize all of that concrete and still allow the applicant to access the existing two-car garage?
The question to me, cutting that, I have to get to the house somehow. And that's already not wide. So cutting that means that I have to put it on the other side. And the main drain is right here. So pretty much I would not like to go closer to that drain because that might create some problems.
But I'm saying, like, what if some of this was removed?
He's at,
You know what I'm saying, like, what if some of that's removed?
he's at 22 feet there. I don't know. You can ask him. I don't.
So if some of the driveway was removed adjacent to Mr. Allen Ford's residence, here, this is a really crude sketch, Jerry, but if you want to come look at this, maybe Jerry and Jim. Like if the driveway was, shortened up here, because now this is all going to be concrete, this would give some more green space over here. Would that allow them to have some plantings there?
I mean, the plantings might be easier even in the driveway, because pretty much there is space for it. We can put the planting, yeah.
Yeah, because I think you could still get to this garage door by thinning down the existing driveway.
It's nicely shaped, and pretty much they will change the shape of it a lot. When you are backing up from this garage, turning that and not hit those trees will be impossible for my wife. But
yeah,
it's just a suggestion.
I honestly think it looks more doable from the drawing than it does in person, to do what you propose.
You know what? I don't mind to put some evergreen bushes in here if they'll help you.
okay, so let's see if there's anyone else here this evening who came to speak to the case.
Is anybody else?
My name is Mariusz Kamiński. I'm a real estate broker. I was the listing broker for this house. I listed this house for 4 months, and everyone that came was pointing to that ugly structure on the back of the house. I think just by putting that garage, the house lost maybe 100,000 minimum in value. It destroyed the house. Appearance, aestheticity, I think the That is a big eyesore from the 301 Gale Court.
Are you the listing agent for 301 Gale Court?
Mhm.
Okay, I didn't, want to make
Yes,
sure I
yes.
understood what.
I listed the house previous year too, and it was beautiful then, and we sold it within 2 weeks for 510. His dad, he was getting old, he didn't want to get rid of the house. He was kind of, he changed his mind because he thought he gonna sell it and he didn't want to sell it. But when I listed this year, we had offer instantly for 80. But before the garage was built. After the garage was built, nothing. Everybody, I had 6, 7 open houses. Everybody that comes to open house, I had to lie to them that the structure gonna be destroyed because they said, well, they're not gonna get it the way it is because it looks so ugly. Absolutely destroyed the view. It was beautiful home, now it's just ugly home. All right, thank you.
Agree. Thank you so much. Let me see if there's anyone else here to present this evening. Okay. Yeah, are you able or no? We can make an exception maybe?
I can.
Dan, why don't we make an exception? Yeah. Yeah, let's,
And we'll repeat your question.
yeah.
I'm in 303. I've been there 35 years. Was there with John Droz.
Yeah, why don't you sit?
And it was always beautiful, just as these people are saying. It was like a park. A lot of you know that. And before this, there was beautiful trees, beautiful landscaping, and in fact, at one point, there was even a beautiful wrought iron fence there, right, Alex? Yep. Okay, and now, I have people come to my house, my neighbors on Gale Court North, they have visitors, and everybody looks, and the first thing you see is this ugly picture of this structure. It's so out of sight, it looks horrible, it just destroys just our whole community there. And nobody is happy with it. And it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And to look at his plastic shed with rocks thrown in the corner, and it's right up against the fence, it's not secured properly, it's not a healthy situation. This is so sad for all of our property values, especially people on Gale Court South, because you people are gonna look at something like that looks like a hotel. It looks like, almost like you'd see on Rand Road on a hotel. This is so sad. We all take pride in our homes, Danielle, you take pride in your home. We all do. But to see this happen, and it's a mistake, now it's affecting all of us. It's going to affect all of our property values. Who's going to pay for that? I know you're talking, he doesn't want to put trees up that are 8 feet because it's too much money. Well, what about the $100,000 that he lost on his house?
Do you understand that he owns from the west side of the cul-de-sac over, and that there's buildable area 40 feet from where the existing house is out to that point? So an addition could go in there at any time. I'm just making sure to understand, so.
However, this all goes back to when you went on vacation. You went on vacation and the guy that was sitting in your seat gave him the permit. And it was a mistake. It shouldn't have been done. That's what we've all been told.
And he was stopped, and that's why you're looking in the condition it is, because we haven't allowed him to go further with it, because he had to go through his processes, legal process, and that's what part of this is.
And now look at the drainage issue. Okay, this gentleman over there's got the drainage issue. This lady here has problems. And the drainage has never been correct on Gale Court North and South. And that's the history of this town ever since those homes were built. It drains, it pools in front of my front yard. It pools in front of my driveway, even when you guys replace the street. It's not pitched properly. And instead of the water running north to go to Willow Road and then go east, it sits in front of my house. I get it from the north to my front yard, and I get it from Gale Court South where it comes under the street and sits there. And there are times that that ditch, or that's whatever you want to call that, it comes halfway up my front yard. I mean, we've got some serious problems there, and now we're looking at this. This is affecting all of us, Dan, and all of you. This is sad.
And as I stated earlier, the engineer went out there and looked at it and does admit that the existing drainage that is in there is one of the worst that he has seen. It was not on the previous list, but he's prioritized it because it wasn't right to begin with, correct? Right. Okay.
Never was right.
Correct. His opinion based on what is being proposed to be built won't impact the current situation because the existing situation has to be fixed. What he's doing is not significantly adding more, making it worse, because that was the question of, my engineer would have came back with the calculation numbers and said, yes, this was negatively impacting worse than it already is. He would have told me that, and I'd be here telling you that.
Wait, Dan, hang on a second. Hold your thoughts. What about the fact that now there's not going to be, he's going to be diminishing the land that would be absorbing the drainage, part of the drainage. So now he's not only added the structure, he's going to be adding more. So where is all that water going to be absorbed? Is it going to go to this lady? Is it going to just sit at that man's driveway? Is it going to come underneath the cul-de-sac and end up in front of my yard?
The drainage is going to go to the pattern, which is flows north. That water in that whole area is designed to go north, and it pools in front of your house, and you have a big ditch with water in it, correct? Always.
And I've got a dry well in there besides.
And so the engineer today said that has to be addressed first, okay, so it is being prioritized. I can't say exactly when because he just went out there and did the evaluation. But his evaluation looking at what is being proposed doesn't significantly add more or make it worse because it has to be fixed. It's bad now and it has to be addressed. That's what the opinion of the city engineer is. So they're,
but we don't know what the timeline is.
on that part, that was just raised recently. There's been drainage looking. I was not involved in that previous study, but with this application, I brought the engineer out there to do it, and he's prioritizing it based on the application and what he observed. So there's more to the issue than just his structure and his project. So let everybody know that.
And I do agree with what Alice stated earlier. This is a very, very unfortunate situation for all of us, including this gentleman here. Okay, he got given the permit, he goes and builds the structure, and now he's faced also with an economic situation. But so are we. And whose mistake was it?
And so that's why I started the meeting with trying to determine, in the event we don't grant the variance, or we don't recommend that it's approved, and city council upholds our recommendation, you know, what's Jerry's plan? And it sounds like the building is going to stay there. Because, Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not, at this point, you're not willing to consider adding on to your existing garage and foregoing the structures that's there.
I mean, if I'm not gonna get, okay for keeping that 5 feet, I'll just cut that 5 feet and I'll leave it like it is. But in my opinion, it will look even worse because there'll be a problem with the roof line. Only thing what I can do in this situation is cover that with the trees all around. I agree that it doesn't look so fancy right now because it's a Tyvek all around. So Tyvek is not so fancy. So however you looking at this right now, it doesn't look finished and doesn't look good at all. And I'm feeling really bad about situation with the house. for my neighbor, and I get it, that pretty much that's the main reason why they can't sell the house, because the house is pretty nice. So, what I can do, if we solve this problem, I'll try to build it as quick as possible, or finish it as quick as possible.
Are you doing brick on the back? I'm sorry. Dan. Are you doing brick on the back as well?
Yeah.
And just so everyone knows that if this goes forward and should be recommended for approval and approved by council, Jerry already has a valid permit, and I've already reviewed his plan, so theoretically, he could start the day after city council approval. So it's not like it has to go out for architectural design, it has to go out for review and all that time. So theoretically, you know, based on the current situation, it's the day, he could literally start the day after council approval if that's the recommendation, and that's the decision. Which, this will be up for Monday, May 14th, would be the first time the city council sees it. That's their next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
When would he be asked to plant reasonable trees? When would that be asked or required to help all of us out, but especially Ellen?
From my side, that kind of depends on the decision. I will have to finish the foundation. That has to be before I put any trees, because pretty much they will ruin the trees. So I have to finish the foundation. If nothing else will change, I can plant those before the bricks, before the structure, and things like that. I don't have a problem with that.
Just so you understand, if it gets approved in its current position, the only work he would need to do is the foundation work of the space between, then he could start the planting, so that could be a very early phase. If it's not recommended that, and he goes to have to take 5 feet off the back, then those trees won't go in until that work is done. Correct?
Yeah.
In that.
Then he doesn't have to put the trees either.
What?
Then he's not required to put the trees because he has a variance. Then he's not required to put anything up.
Correct.
On top of it.
He's not required to plant the trees if he gets the variance?
If
No,
he doesn't
get the variance.
If he doesn't get the variance, he's not required to put those trees up. We're making it part of the variance to put the trees up.
Okay, so is there any other public comment? Because we would need to now, we didn't close a public hearing yet,
Not yet.
correct? Right, so we would need to close a public hearing so then the commissioners can convene on the information presented to us tonight. Okay, so then I would like to ask for a motion to close the public hearing on application number ZBA 18-06V.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Commissioners, thoughts, comments?
I mean, this situation, we understand what everyone's saying. If we had to rewind the clock, and the way I look at it, if he had the mind of putting an addition to his garage, you would see something similar, not just as far west as it goes now. You'd probably go as far as you can west along the building line, kind of what you're proposing. Here's a neighbor to the south proposed. But he's stuck. He went through the proper channels, got a permit, and he's really not fighting. He's saying, look, I'll do whatever my neighbors are willing to do without costing him a fortune, which I think is a good neighbor. And he's making the best of the situation. He's planting trees when he can. There is a cost to everything that happens. So, to me, once the brick's up, I agree with Dominic Construction. You guys see Tyvek up, it's an eyesore. Once that brick gets all around the building, I'd add another dormer to the 2-car garage in between it to kind of make it look not so much garagey in the middle. The dormer that you have all the way on the left, I'd add maybe 1 or 2 or a bigger one in the middle. I think that would help the aesthetics of the house. I think that'll go a long way from what you see now. That's my opinion.
No.
He would have 5 currently planned right now. I mean, it's 5 regardless.
So
without
Commissioner, yeah, he's is suggesting an architectural addition to enhance the elevation.
This
Right.
decorative feature to add one or two in here to try and break up that roof line is what the Commissioner Patel said.
But he'll end up with 5 garages.
He's
He's
gonna have-
Yes.
attached.
Yeah.
Attached to the house.
It'd be all attached. Is there a limit to the number of garage spaces?
No.
No.
As long as it's all in one building.
Okay, so any other comments from the commissioners?
Mr. Mazinski, is that how you pronounce his name? You know, I feel like your neighbors are all being, you know, fairly accommodating in this issue. They understand that this is they've all expressed a understanding that this is a bad situation all around for all parties. You know, if your variance wasn't granted by the commission and the board, you've expressed a view that you would be taking the back of that garage off, and I got to imagine the expense of doing that would far exceed the taller trees that your neighbors have suggested as a alternative means of blocking it. So I would recommend that you consider their request as part of the variance, the granting of the variance, and install the taller arborvitae. I'm not an arborist, so I can't tell you if they come in 8-foot size or 5.
I put in
5.
22 of them on my property, and they were 6 foot when I put them in.
So, I mean, your neighbors have all expressed an understanding of the problem and willing to live with the variance under those conditions, and so
10 years ago.
would you be willing to consider that offsetting the expense of tearing down the back of the garage in lieu of putting up taller arborvitaes?
Is 6 foot enough? Because pretty much 8 footers is a big difference in expense.
Let's
Talking about like 6 grand in difference.
Let's ask a clarification question. Are you talking in the area just behind the garages or all of them? Because that's a significant difference.
Yes.
You know, I don't live on this street, so I can't really speak to it. I would think that along the length of the addition would be sufficient. I mean, as it stands right now, you know, there's no screening and there's no requirement for screening, so that would be my personal opinion for the length of the back of the addition on the garage. I think would be a reasonable, and especially considering that you're willing to put in arborvitaes all along the way.
He's talking about just the back end of the garage, so maybe.
I can put in the back of the garage, in my opinion, it's not gonna look so good because pretty much it will break the line of it.
Yeah, they're gonna be
And I
uneven.
also like to continue that along the fence to the backyard as well. So breaking that, in my opinion, is gonna look worse than just nice line 6 footers. That's my personal opinion.
So a 6 foot minimum sounds like it might be a good compromise then, because they can all be 6 feet.
Are you okay with 6 feet?
Yeah, 6 feet, yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Okay.
I do say, based on even everyone's comments, I think even the neighbors would say it's better to have the variation and have them finish it than lop it off. I think you're gonna have a worse eyesore if you don't, if this variation is not granted.
So I guess my only comment is, I was going to recuse myself to speak as a resident this evening. I chose not to because, unfortunately, if I was to voice a displeasure with the addition, it wouldn't change the fact that it's going to be continue to be built. So therefore, I chose not to because, again, the applicant has the right to build within the allowable footprint without a variance. And if his intentions are true that he's just going to cut the back off, the existing structure as it's built can't be enforced, is legal in accordance with the current municipal codes. So although I'm very displeased that the city and the applicant put us in this position, which generated the drawings we're seeing here today, the applicant has the right to build within current city code. So again, I feel it's unfortunate. However, even if we deny the variance, the aesthetics of what's being presented is not going to change. So that being said, the potential conditions of approval this evening would be first to eliminate other exterior storage, and that does not include the shed in the back?
The existing shed in the back was not part of it, but there's the temporary plastic storage, there's things that are not permitted or shown on the plat.
Okay, so the condition would be no additional, the current plastic, or I haven't seen it myself. I know I've seen it, but.
The shed in
Right.
the northeast corner, no, to your right, way to the right, up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have that plastic one that's in there, the shed, that's a non-permitted structure anyway.
So would be to eliminate that non-permitted structure and not allow any additional exterior storage other than the existing frame shed shown on the site plan submitted by the applicant. The other condition to approval would be that the proposed evergreen fence, they're the plant materials that the applicant is proposing, in lieu of the 5-foot height, it would be a minimum of 6 foot. And then we also discussed this evening additional dormers to try to create a more appealing elevation to the south where the garage extension is being put. Do any of the other commissioners want to comment on the dormers, since we didn't, other than that being presented as an option, we didn't necessarily discuss that? Is that something?
Two dormers are going to fit in the existing portion of the garage, and pretty much one in this section will be off center of the doors. So in my opinion, it's not going to look any good. And pretty much on that section, we get to add between the garages, that dormer is gonna look really bad. So aesthetically, adding the dormers on this section will be really bad. In my opinion. Pretty much you can fit two with like dormer next to each other, and that's gonna look really weird.
I totally agree with the applicant.
Hold on a second. Hold on, folks.
I totally agree with the applicant. As a builder, as far as those dormers need to be centered on those garage doors, so now you've got, as far as two different size garage doors there, so you would definitely to do it correctly, but it's not architecturally gonna look proper as far as you'd need a small dormer and then a bigger dormer to match the other one. And then it's gonna turn into a dormer nightmare. So I think you're just throwing, architectural features on the roof line that I think are gonna be even worse than what we have here now.
So Jim, since you're most negatively affected, do you have an opinion in regards to asking for additional architectural elements, whether it be a dormer?
I thought
always be better off without the dormer feature at all, and then, maybe, or have just one, you know, over here. Of course, that wouldn't work with the window sidelines probably, so, you know, no dormer and attractive doors that all matched each other might work better. But
So does
having one dormer, when it was a freestanding garage, having the dormer on it, it kind of makes sense that it was a nice idea. Now it just doesn't look right at all to have it on there. I don't know, if you have to re-roof the whole thing if you take it off.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Allenfort. Okay, so other than the exterior storage and then the 6-foot minimum and potentially asking for additional architectural concessions, were there any other conditions that would be proposed by any of the commissioners? Okay. So if someone wants to make a recommendation,
I'll make the recommendation as modified.
So for the record, Commissioner Taman has recommended a motion approving the 5-foot 6-inch side yard variation with the conditions as stated.
Yeah, not to exceed 5 foot 6 inches, because I think
Yes.
he said that it might be less.
At the time when the application was filed, we didn't have the exact number, and I think it's 5 foot 4 inches.
5 foot 2 according to the plans when we measured from the property line was 4.7.
Correct, but I was going off of your surveyor's numbers, which we'll have to talk after, because he owes you something.
and then, you know, I guess what I want to add too is if we amend the height of the evergreen trees, we should revisit the spacing. So if pictorially this shows, I didn't add them all up, if it's 40, I don't know what the number is, 50, that we should revisit the spacing to make sure that it's appropriate for a larger caliber tree versus just specifically quantifying the number of plant materials that are on this plan.
It should create an opaque screen.
Yeah, so, because I think,
Consistent with the plantings.
The way his plan reads is he puts in the height and a spacing, he doesn't give an exact number. What we could do is request a revised site plan from his design professional indicating the new size of the trees and the proper spacing.
okay. Okay, all right, so John, you made a motion to approve the requested variation with the 2 conditions of the removing the exterior storage and then the 6-foot minimum.
Correct.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jen, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Taman.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Mellon.
Aye.
And Chairman Dash.
Abstain.
So 501. Okay.
Okay, so,
This will be, oh, you got to do some more work, I'm sorry.
right, so we're going to do these, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so I need a motion, please, to receive into the public record the staff review of compliance of this application with the zoning standards as presented by staff this evening, and to make these standards a part of the official record for the application.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And there was no additional evidence, correct? Because these were all part of the applicant's package?
Yes.
Okay. So, and as I mentioned, we're a recommending body, so this case then will be in front of the city council on the May, you said?
May 14th, Monday night, May 14th, 6:30 here will be the first reading, and we can go from there, so. They won't take any new testimony, because this will be all written up and given to them, but you can come and you can speak to the issue. Everybody has a right to speak to an agenda item. So, you have that right. Come back and speak.
So are there any communications this evening?
Yes. You guys all should have gotten notice from the Cook County Clerk's Office about your economic, okay?
Mine's
If-
already filed.
Good, because if you don't do it by May 1, they will send you a bill. Okay, and we don't want you guys to get billed for that. Yeah, the ethics. Yes, the ethics. Economic interest.
So you don't have to come to my office.
Correct, like I did last year.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, any other communications?
We will have a meeting next month.
Okay, there will be a meeting next month
The
during
24th?
the 24th of
May.
May, back on our regularly scheduled Thursday evening.
Yes.
Okay, so with no further business, do I hear a motion to adjourn the April 25th, 2018 Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?